Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Earthen's Den. And it is November. I am feeling very fabulous, very much alive, very much grateful for this year. I remember being in earlier years in my life and just wanting things to change for me, and just really being discouraged because I wasn't seeing those changes as soon as I thought I should see those changes. And this was the first year where I really took a step back and I started to assess how this year has gone and all of my accomplishments externally, but also a lot of the work that I've been doing on myself internally. And I'm very proud. So I made some really interesting decisions this year. I've done a lot of things that I had never done before. And I think that that's where the change starts. So I just want to encourage everybody to get out and do something you've never done before. I talk to you guys about therapy. We talk about working out. We talk about setting new goals for yourself. The company you keep, right? Earthen's Den has been really adamant, right? I'm making sure that we are solid individuals before we come into community with anybody, right? I've always been that kind of person that stood on that. So I just kind of want to talk really briefly about setting our intentions for the month of November. So for myself, one of the biggest things was learning to be grateful and learning to be a little bit more patient with myself and my journey. I think when we look at the years and how fast the time goes, it's like, wow, this is so crazy, right? So consistency has definitely been very important. And, though I have those moments where it's a little bit wavering, I'm like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. I get on here and I realize how much I do enjoy it even with the bad, right? And I'm like, I got to keep doing this, right? I want to reach my goals. I want to see what this is going to be. And so I kind of want to talk to you guys really briefly too about like the past and like dabbling in your past. I definitely have been someone who has done this oftentimes in my life. And a lot of times it comes from not necessarily just merely loneliness, but sometimes it can just come from you thinking that the grass is greener or you're missing something, right? Like sometimes when we feel like we're missing something or we're going through transitions in our lives, it's very easy to hang on to what is familiar, right? So when it comes to your past, I just want to let you guys know this. I talked about this in my book Seasons. It is the one thing that is it's a constant, right? Your past will always be your past. Like it will always be your past. Your past will never change, and here's the thing about your past. You can't go back and do anything differently about your past. So you really have to move forward in your life. You got to accept that your past is your past and it is what it is. You know what I mean? Anytime we're kind of in a space where we go back to our past and we want to hook back up with certain people, know that those people probably are still the same, but you changed. You know what I mean? And so sometimes, we can look back on situations and it's like, oh man, this is so much fun. And I definitely think too, like being in the midst of your mid-20s, you know what I mean? Like as I get older, I'm still very young. And though I'm not in a rush, right? I'm not in a rush, but my responsibilities look a little bit differently. You know what I mean? My mindset is a lot different. And I think this is probably the hardest part about growth is because it comes a point in your life where you're like, I can keep doing the same things I've always done and I can keep living life this one way, or I can like grow up. You know what I mean? And I think that choosing to grow, it sucks because you kind of let go of a lot of things you used to do. You know what I mean? And that stuff seems fun. And I think that's typically what our 20s are predicated on, fun, right? So I don't think that you have to rush your life. Like I'm never saying rush your life, but I do think that it's important to just kind of gauge where you're at and just be mindful. If you're an artist and you have dreams, you have things you want to do, you have to learn to strategize. You have to learn how to plan. You have to learn how to really carry the weight and the responsibility of carrying out your dreams and making those things, come to pass. I think in addition to that, as you get older, you got to start holding yourself accountable. You have to be accountable for how you perceive situations, how you handle situations, how you go about situations, right? Like that all becomes on you because at the end of the day, there's nobody to do that for you. So you have to be mindful of that. So that's kind of just like the learning curve. And that's kind of like coming into your 30s or just getting older. You know what I mean? Like just getting older and knowing like, I do have to create some stability for myself. I do have to sustain my lifestyle, right? Because I think without that bottom, like without that security and that stability in your home life and just like, knowing where your next check is going to come from. Don't get me wrong. I know we talk about entrepreneurship. We get it. We know it's like one of those things where it may not be as consistent in the beginning. You just have to understand that too. And I think here's another thing. I would definitely say give yourself grace to grow into who you want to become, right? I don't think a lot of people talk about this, but as you get older, I really, really feel that you have a lot more courage. You know, you have a little bit more belief in yourself. You're no longer, like for my ladies, I don't think that, I think as you get older, you learn to trust your intuition, trust your instincts, trust what you know what I mean? You're no longer in that space where you're kind of like double-minded back and forth on the fence. So I just think that, growth looks different for everybody. But I think and just to summarize it, I just think it's time to kind of recognize where you're at in certain places and just realize, like, you know what, okay, I can move this forward, but I have to be willing to gauge it. I think another thing I would say is, please stop underestimating what you currently have. I can't stress that enough. I really believe in positive thinking. I've always been that kind of person, just because my thoughts, me daydreaming, me writing, me doing all these creative things have always been the outlet for me. It's always been the outlet for my mindset. It's always been the outlet for just getting me out of certain situations that I didn't want to be in physically. Like I would just dream and I would do all of these things. And so my imagination is very vivid and I feel like it's a very lucrative imagination, right? I think just being able to dream in itself is currency, honestly, because we all know that ideas become things and, so being in that space, I think that it's important to have a positive mindset about your life and to really, really focus on your journey and what it is that you're doing. I personally, when I'm entering into a situation, I see the possibility of what it could be. And it's always been that way for me. And I am so blessed and thankful. And I encourage everybody to really utilize their imagination. Like, see what could be. Don't see what is. I remember when I first moved into my place, everybody was like, oh my God, like, no, right? They were not digging on my spot, but I loved it because I felt that it was filled with character. And I like taking ugly things and making them beautiful, right? Now, hold up, because I'm not saying that I find people that are, that I think are challenged, that I may perceive to be physically challenged. Like, that's not what I'm saying. And by no means am I superficial. What I am saying is that I like things that people don't like because they overlook it, right? And I think that maybe that just comes from my projection of being the underdog, right? But I love that. I love to see stuff and make it more. I love to see things and maximize its potential. I love that. Like, that's for me, that's my highest form of manifestation. I believe in that. And I love to see things really, really come into fruition. So that's kind of how I've always operated. And that's worked for me every single time. And so with every opportunity in my life, I make sure that I maximize this current situation and where I'm at. You know what I mean? And so because I know what I want, in my current situation, I'm like, you know what? I know what this could do for me. And I'm very intentional about how I'm going to get what it is that I want out of that. Now, hear me clearly, right? This is the thing I talked to you guys about, being an influencer, having a platform, sharing your voice. You have to be very mindful what you say and you have to break it down, and it could be, but it's fine, right? I love teaching. It's okay. I don't mind. So when I see something and I love, and I go after it and I'm very intentional about what it is that I want, I don't believe in hurting people. I'm not a liar. I don't believe in hurting people. I don't believe in, all of that foolery that kind of comes in that, is typically a conversation around like success. Like, that's never my MO. But what I am saying is that I know what it is that I want from the experience. And because I know what I want from the experience, right, that can really, really help you navigate how you see the experience and how you receive it. You know what I mean? So for me, it's like, okay, if I know my intention is to go to Target, find some things that, make me feel good. I want to do a self-care. Okay, cool. My mind is already like, all right, I know how I'm going to do this, right? And then, of course, we could talk budgets. I know that was a very simple explanation, but it's just that simple. Like, honestly, it's just that simple. So it's like, if you're at work and you're like, you know what, I really hate my job. I don't want to be here, but I believe that this manager or this position can really help me in leadership. So my intention is to train one person before I leave this job that I hate so much, right? Maybe, hey, I just want to train one person. I just want to show somebody what I know, and then I'll be on my way. I feel like everything I've learned, I did a good job, right? Like, I don't know. I just think having an intention with everything that you do, like, it can just really help you get through the experience, you know what I mean? And really receive it for what it is and be thankful for it, like, wholesomely. So, yeah. So let's go ahead and get into talking about our intentions for the month of October. Oh my goodness. It's so crazy, man. On Thanksgiving, So intentionality for me, and something that I encourage for everybody, is like the main focus for the intention of November, right? Like, get clear on what it is that you want, and definitely supplement it to prayer, right? Like, make sure that you're praying over the things that you want. Make sure that you are in a space where you're believing and giving yourself time to get to your goals. I think that that's probably one of the hardest things about being someone who's extremely ambitious, right? It's like sometimes you could be a little impatient, and you have to realize, like, okay, if you want something, believe that it can happen for you, right? Especially if it's, like purely intended, of course, but believing that it can happen for you, and just being intentional about your moves that you make, and to get there. You know what I mean? I think that that's probably like the biggest thing. And so I just encourage everybody to really set their intentions. I think in regards to friendships, in regards to relationships, just the whole nine, like, be mindful of what it is that you want, and why you want it. And I think when you can identify your why, right? Like, why do I want this thing, or why do I want, what I mean? That helps you to really, really stay focused on it, and making sure that, it does come to pass, because I think faith without works is dead. And I think that that's probably one of the biggest things that I personally just really, really believe. And I think that a lot of people kind of miss that. I know sometimes, like, in a religious sense, sometimes it's like, okay, we are expecting God to do things for us, and God can do the miraculous. Like, let's not, get it confused, but there also has to be a little bit of work, or if not a little bit, but some work on our ends, So I think it's trusting that. I think it's believing that. And I think that it's knowing that, that it can happen for you. I think another thing too is, understanding that when some opportunities don't come your way, it's not a bad thing. Just know that God has something better for you. I've had an experience in my life recently where I finally got to a point, and this happened like a couple years ago, but I finally got to a point in my life where I was able to release that opportunity, because I thought for so long that it was my opportunity, right? I thought it was mine. I thought you know what I mean? I thought that it was for me, and it turned out that it totally wasn't. And I have really held on to that for a long time, but I realized that looking in the rear view, holding on to that opportunity, not realizing that there was something better, that kind of closed my mind a little bit. So I just encourage people, like, whenever you have an opportunity and it doesn't fall through, just know that there is something better. And you have to trust that, you have to trust that there's something better. You know what I mean? So yeah, try to do things that you've never done before. I think that's the biggest way to get to become who you want to become. You know what I mean? It's very hard to get to your goals, or to do anything differently, or receive anything differently, when you keep doing the same thing, right? Like, that's kind of like insanity, right? But I think if you can sit in a space and do things differently, and, be mindful of that. And I'm also going to end with this too. I definitely think, I know, like, being on socials and just the whole nine, like, just be mindful of what you're consuming. Like, I know we talk about this a lot, but, I was listening to, she was a financial planner. She talked about, I can't think of her name, y'all. I think her YouTube was The Break. I think it was called The Break. And she basically, she made a very profound point, which I think that we all can, relate to. But it's really important that if you are going to be online, and you are someone who wants to do certain things, like, be mindful of your consumption versus your contribution. You know what I mean? Like, make sure that you guys are, if you are in a space where you're a content creator or whatever, you know what I mean? Make sure that you are putting out your products and your services, rather than just kind of tuning into everybody else's products and services, because that level of comparison, it just can become very stifling. And I know that we don't talk about it enough. Personally, I think that we don't talk about that enough. A lot of people talk about comparison and how it's just like, it's nothing. But I think when you're online and you see so many different things, it's just like, it's easy for you to compare, to say, you know what I mean? And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just to be mindful of, like, what you're consuming and where you're at, and just learn how to, like, trailblaze your own journey, and learn how to be thankful for where it is that you have come, right? So set your intentions for the month of November. What do you want to see in your life, internally, externally? Like, where do you want to be at? You know what I mean? Like, how do you want to maximize on the things that you currently have? You know what I mean? How do you want to take whatever you're doing to the next level, right? How do you want to have better friendships? How do you want to have better relationships? Like, you know what I mean? Like, just be mindful of that. And I think that just kind of sitting in a space where you're communicating with yourself can really, really bring forth a lot of clarity. So Yes, be mindful of those things. And, when it comes to your past, just understand that's something that will never change. You know what I mean? You may change, but your past may not change. And sometimes, sometimes it can be the other way, but I just typically that's not the way that works. And that's okay. You know what I mean? That's totally okay. We don't have to have any, right? Because our past is what has brought us here, right? Those past decisions have brought us to our current space. And if you're not happy there, then you have to look at yourself. But if you are happy where you are currently, then that's something to actually be proud of, right? Because you've went through it, you've been through it, and now you made it to the other side. So, okay, guys, I hope everybody has an amazing day. Like I said, I'm going to be way more intentional about my podcast and what content I'm giving out, what content I'm putting out, just because, like I said, I realized that in the beginning, I was like, oh man, this is crazy. Like, I don't know what I want to talk about and what, I really want to see on this podcast in regards to my content. I was kind of just like overflowing y'all with, some vulnerabilities, some truth, some things that I really, really felt could help resonate with many. And though it was authentic and well-intended, that level of exposure is not something that I wish to disclose anymore. So that's definitely something I'm going to be working on, but we're still going to have insight. We're still going to have some real talk. So I look forward to those things, and I hope everybody has an amazing day.